Hey guys!
Hello!
Welcome back to Wandering into Wellness. So this time around, you're in for a treat. Mushrooms.
Mushrooms,
Shrooms.
yeah. Super exciting because I feel like at the moment loads and loads of people are getting into mushrooms and into foraging, and there's more and more stuff springing up about like natural local foods and how that they affect us and how they're better for us, and it's just exciting, isn't it, to get out there and be able to pick your own foods for free.
And it's also a big community building thing as well. It feels like a bit of a metal because I mean the mushroom we were on. Well, I was on 3 mushroom foraging things. I think you went with me on with Bill. And you get that sense, I mean, when you're in a bigger group, I mean, the couple of ones that we did in Kilruddery were, you know, there was like 50 people. Yeah. And so you're meeting up in the morning, you're having a cup of tea, somebody's going through whether these mushrooms are going to kill you or not, or maybe they mostly will, so don't eat them, wait till we check them out, you know. And there's this sort of like building kind of fizzy atmosphere early on a Sunday morning, and people brought their baskets, their lovely wicker baskets, and some people brought plastic bags, and that doesn't matter, that's cool too, because they're getting reused. And yes, you get out there, and as a gang, I think you disperse, and then you kind of come back together again after a few hours of foraging, and it's so much fun to see what other people have found. Like some of the massive, like we saw these, what are they called? Boletus parasols. That's what they're called, and like huge mushrooms, things that are like beyond Instagram winners. You know, they're really amazing looking things, and they're just on our doorstep. Like they're not, you don't have to go to Mount Fuji in Japan for these things.
Yeah, and I think it's also like one of the big things about the rise of yoga has been that it's a personal practice practiced alongside other people. And it's very like that, isn't it? It's like you're going to do a thing, you're learning about a thing, you're doing it in the company of other people, but it's a solo pursuit. So there's a meditative quality to it, which it's really restorative.
Yeah, and so the first time I did a permaculture workshop, we ran one on the farm in Finlock a good few years ago now. And the first thing we did in the day was we just walked out into the field and we just stood. And we were just like, you listen to the first thing. So the first things you hear are like the trucks passing on the M4, and then you start to get beneath that, and you start to hear that bit of wind in the trees, and then you hear the wind in the grass, and then you're hearing like the tiniest noises from your digestive system, and then you're hearing like, God, can I hear those birds on the lake? But that's miles away. And just all of that lovely kind of settling thing. And that has a real residual effect as well. I think that the awareness, the internal, external awareness thing, realizing that you're part of that environment.
And that's so much the case with the mushrooms, wasn't it? Because what fascinated me, which I didn't know at all really about, was the mycelial network stuff that we talked about with Bill. Yeah. And now I'm just like becoming a big nerd finding out about that.
It's beyond fascinating. I mean, like because you know, you treat some things around science it's like when quantum physics comes along and replaces classical physics models. And we're told that there's probably a multiverse, that we're all connected by this web of energy, and yet we still go back to going, you know, I'm going to drive in my car, I'm separated from that person. You can't integrate these things. Like with mycelial networks, you can't understand how much, you can't take it into account how much these things are like part of our every living, breathing moment. Like we're breathing in their spores. We share like, what is it, more than 50% of our DNA with them, which is more than we share with any other animal. You know, or any other plant, like it's beyond weird. Like there's a real shared destiny there with mushrooms.
And not just with us, but with each other. I mean, that idea of them making their own kind of microcosm. They've got their community, they feed the weaker ones, you know, they take stuff from the ones that are dying to feed the rest of it. They choose who they're going to give this bit to and this bit to. And, you know, it gives you a whole template really for looking at community in a different way in our life.
And we always assume that things that can't walk and talk and run about aren't intelligent. It's quite the opposite. I mean, like they've just learned, like, we don't need to walk and talk and run about. We have lovely, subtle communication networks. And actually, you know, as the way it looks like as a human species, we're not going to keep going very long on the path we're on at the moment. Looking at how those guys are doing things, like minimal energy input for maximal output, like all those sorts of things that are like very, like sustainability to them is like, it's a way of life. They have to use the tiniest things in the most efficient way in order to maximize their environmental use, and they have to use each other. They have that codependence thing, which like you're saying is a big deal. But you had an interesting factoid. Lydia Sass, join the dots between mushrooms and sperm for us for a second there, would you?
Okay, so listen to the podcast and you'll hear about my moment to do with truffles and sperm. And I would just like to have a little kind of addendum thing here that I read a book called The Food of Love, a while back, and it was talking about all the kind of historical practices through Italy and Europe around traditional foraging methods or traditional food methods, and how in each different area of Italy they cooked foods in a different way. So in Rome it might be all about offal, and in the south it would be very different foods. And it came to a bit about truffle hunting, and there was this kind of truffle hunt that took place, and it all got very romantic, sensual, sexual, or whatever. And they were talking about pheromones, and there was a traditional ritual in the book of men putting their sperm on the base of trees in order to encourage new growth of truffles. And so I raised that with Bill to ask him how he knew about that, thinking I would get lots of interesting information, and then he looked at me blankly as if I was completely crazy.
Cum truffles, really?
Since then, I contacted the author of that book, who got back to me to say that he had looked back through his notebooks because he had travelled extensively around Europe when writing the book, and he couldn't pinpoint exactly where he had got that specific story from, but that most of the stories in the book had been taken from old wives' tales or old women in Italy that he had spoken to about traditional rituals. So it is possible, and I'm not crazy.
There are weirder things in the world than that. And anyway, guys, so enjoy this one. It's a lovely wander. We're out in Adair Manor foraging with Bill, having chats. You'll have to endure a little bit of me getting to know a Steadicam and holding a very heavy rig for like 45 minutes, which I occasionally fail at. So hopefully enjoy it. You get to see a little bit of the outdoors, get to see a bit of Bill and his expertise. He's an amazing guy. And thanks very much to our sponsors for this one, obviously, because they are ruthlessly necessary in all of our pursuits, because otherwise we can't keep doing this stuff. So we have Newsest. You guys can hop on to newsest.co.uk and use our code up there. We'll put all our codes obviously into the show notes here. Who else is our sponsor?
Clearlight infrared saunas.
Yeah, they're our new sponsor. That's very exciting. So
really exciting. We'll be doing a podcast from your infrared sauna very soon to tell you about all the benefits of that, and cold water immersion, hot water, cold water therapy. But they are amazing, really, really amazing. Get yourself one. Get yourself one, or your business one, and
find a way. Get your community one. I don't know, but I feel like sauna as part of community in Finland and Sweden and Japan and other parts of the world where they have these traditions. And actually, it's been a tradition in Ireland as well, which is something we definitely need to raise on the podcast in the future. Those are things that you don't have to have just to yourself. I don't want to have mine just to myself, so come and share mine. I didn't say that. Also, Swivel, who are very generous to us. They obviously supplied our robot that you're watching this on now, and it's a fantastic little unit that helps you to like shoot and record and upload and distribute lots of video content, educational content, whatever. So thanks to them.
So we'll put all our codes in the notes below, and if you're interested in knowing more, you can also contact us. And otherwise, we hope you enjoy listening.
Deadly. Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, folks.
Hello.
Welcome back to Wandering into Wellness.
Welcome.
Finn and Lydia on our new mobile camera situation. Let's see how that goes. And we have today a very special guest, Bill O'D, standing amongst us, looking calm, with his phone possibly still on.
Hi guys, was that my phone?
Yes.
I think it might have been.
It sure wasn't your phone?
Oh, my phone doesn't make those noises. That's my phone, in fact.
That's people sending me pictures of mushrooms to identify. This time of year I have to keep it on.
I will believe it. Are you getting a lot of them?
Yeah, we get a good few every day.
Okay,
really?
Oh my god. And do you manage to get back to all of them? What do you?
Yeah, most of them.
Fair dues. And is that through like Twitter? Is that like, what is it?
Well, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram.
Okay. And is it the case where how confident are you getting back to somebody and saying, oh yeah, that's a blah blah blah, go and eat it?
Well, what we have to be careful. So what we will do is we will often know exactly what it is, but typically we just direct people to a link.
Okay. Yeah.
So we say looks like honey fungus.
Yeah.
Link to honey
Go
fungus.
and have a look at this.
Because people have to make their own decision if they want to eat a mushroom.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the big trick.
And certainly over a picture, we wouldn't want to be in a position where we're saying to someone it's safe to eat. So we don't do that.
Not a fun. Yeah. And is there laws and legality around it, or like how is it just Ireland being kind of litigious? It's where we got to be careful.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
I don't think there's any laws and legality, but I mean, obviously, if you were seen to have be an expert, and I don't consider myself to be an expert, by the way.
Okay. Oh, we didn't introduce you that.
The more you know about mushrooms and fungi, the more you realise there is to know. So even the top people in the world would all say that there's a lot they don't know.
Yeah, I think I had a story from somebody who was in the shop the other day talking about was it a Spanish lady who was I think considered a world expert, but she only survived chronic kidney damage because one of her family lent her a kidney. There was something quite recently enough, apparently, and
from eating a mushroom.
From eating a mushroom,
because they say that typically the most poisonings are people who know a good bit about mushrooms.
Right. Okay. And a sense of overconfidence.
Because overconfidence. Yeah.
Yeah.
My friend, I've always had a slight fear about mushrooms because my friend lives on a farm, and they had a mushroom expert come and guide all of them around and do a mushroom hunt, and they collected a load of mushrooms and they all ate them, and all of them ended up in hospital. With all of them with really bad poison.
Every single one.
Was this in Ireland?
England.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Well, you know, I mean, there's a famous mushroom hunt in California where all the professors of mycology and that go to it, and it's been going on for decades. And they did an exercise, so they lay out all the mushrooms at the end and they identify them with labels.
Okay.
And they did an exercise where these guys went through and gene sequenced all the mushrooms, and they came up with about I think it was 46% were incorrectly identified.
Oh my God!
Really?
It's nearly half by people who know what they're doing.
By the top experts in the
people in
world,
the world.
probably. But that said, that wouldn't mean that they were saying that, you know, a poisonous mushroom was edible.
Yeah.
There would be variants and things like that. But they were.
Okay, yeah, and that's the thing. It's like species and subspecies.
But it's evolving knowledge. There's so much. They reckon there's 1.5 million different types of fungi on this planet.
And that's how many different types of plants are there?
I'm not sure.
It's less than that, though, isn't it?
I would say so. Yeah,
I'd
imagine so. Yeah.
Wow, that's an amazing concept to think about.
So, and there's only 100 and something thousand of them identified.
Yeah.
So there's huge, and they regularly reclassify fungi as well.
I mean, it really relates back to our microbiome as well, where we're dealing with an ecosystem of maybe 7,000 different species, of which we know, I think, half or less than half, and constantly laboratories are doing assays on like gut analyses and stool analyses. They're coming back like unidentified, unidentifiable, which is bizarre. I mean, it's bizarre.
And of course, some of those are fungi, some of those
big time yeasts as well. Yeah, not just bacteria. Yeah. And have you how do you treat that relationship between outer world and inner world in terms of our, like, I mean, obviously what we're putting in our mouths is what makes us as human beings. Obviously, you treat mushrooms as an important part of that.
Well, it's interesting because if you look, say, at the trees around us, and you could also, our microbiome is within us, and we can walk and get food and consume the food, and we consume it internally through all the fungi and the bacteria and that in our stomachs. Trees are like the reverse of that, so they can't move, but around their roots they have the action of bacteria and fungi in particular, who form these mycorrhizal relationships with the roots, and they're feeding nutrients back into the trees. So it's like us inside out.
Wow.
Really
But it's the same mechanisms. The breaking down of the nutrients is still coming from the fungi and the bacteria in the soil, you know, back into the trees.
And some of the magic, like, we maybe get into this in more details, like some of the magic of that, isn't it true that a tree essentially, through its roots, the mycorrhizal network comes to understand what the tree is in need of in terms of phosphorus, nitrogen, the different various minerals, and essentially goes and finds that within its mycelial network, breaks it down chemically, sucks it up through its little kind of like root network, mycelial network, and then when it gets to the tree, there's a weird thing that happens because it essentially kind of knocks on the door, and then the tree softens its fibers, doesn't it, and allows the mushroom, the mycorrhizal,
takes it in
to actually enter it, and then the mycorrhizal feeds off the sugars in the tree or something as well. There's a great exchange that goes on.
That's the symbiosis.
It's magic. I mean, that really is magic.
It's amazing. And all the plants and trees are doing this with fungi.
And all the time.
All over the place. This is why you see fairy rings on the grass and that. That's exchanges of nutrients with the grass at the edge of the mycelium colony.
So a fairy ring, can you describe what that looks like? I mean, have we got any here that we can see?
Yeah, you'll see fairy rings on any untreated grass. So in most of you in your gardens, you'll see these fairy rings, and I know you probably think they're due to fairies and magic, but they're actually not.
What? Well,
it is magic. It does sound magic, though.
It's magic, but it's coming from fungi, and the fungi is growing through under the ground, and it's symbiotic with the grass. It has that exchange relationship, and at the edge of the fungal mycelium, you have this. It's exchanging these nutrients, and it's putting up mushrooms when the conditions are right.
Okay.
So you'll often see mushrooms growing in the fairy rings in the rich grass.
Right. Okay. That's where to look for them in those fairy rings.
Well, you certainly you will usually see mushrooms growing in fairy rings at certain stages. Yeah.
That's magic.
In the autumn, typically.
Yeah. So mushrooms. One of the other things I was reading lately, or was on a podcast I was telling you about this, I think, was that they'd found contents of whole proteins from salmon within like red cedars in, I think, North America, somewhere close to Canada, and they put it down to, they found that essentially it's the mycorrhizome or whatever, that network, the mycelium network.
Yeah.
That been like when bears are in the salmon runs killing salmon, they leave loads of bits on the side. The mushrooms come and like gather little bits of the protein, consume them, and then send them back through into the tree, and the tree gets fed with them. Like it's amazing.
Salmon?
Yeah, whole bits of salmon inside tree feeding trees.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, it's wild. Like it's
amazing.
really wild. And then there's this idea of the wood wide web, this thing that we have. You know, they've figured it. I don't know how they figured it. I'm sure they're going to learn more. But there's a network of roughly kind of 70 trees at a time that are all communicating with each other quite closely in terms of donation of nutrients from one to the next. And so when one tree is dying, the mycorrhizome, or that mycelial network, will suck all of the nitrogen from it and deliver it over perfectly equal portions to the 70 trees around it.
And they can feed the weaker trees, so the younger trees can be fed in times of drought and things. They can give them priority, and through the mycelial network give nutrients to those trees. And not just their own offspring.
Yeah.
Although seemingly they can differentiate between their own offspring and other trees.
Really?
What?
Seemingly.
Wow. God, I hadn't heard that. That's crazy.
Isn't
Yeah,
it?
You're not my son.
I know. I will not
Something
give you the
more for
nitrogen.
my daughter.
But you know, it brings to mind, like, what is the definition of intelligence? You know, and when you see the complexity of nature and what's going on, and fungi is an ideal way to see that.
Yeah.
You realise, you know, there is an intelligence there that's
Absolutely.
beyond the intelligence we understand.
And I mean, we treat it as some sort of magic, and I think only because we can't quite comprehend the level of intelligence that must require.
Yeah.
And because we see things that haven't got arms and legs and don't speak.
Yeah.
With.
Well, we are arrogant. We see ourselves as, you know, obviously we're the
supreme
superior.
species.
You know, we call the shots on the planet.
Yeah. I love that idea that people are talking about lately, that that bacteria and yeast inside us are like essentially they're in the driver's seat. They're sending neurotransmitters, they're sending signals, they're creating chemicals that decide what our diet's going to be, that decides who we're going to interact with that day. Like we're the host.
We're the host,
Yeah.
exactly.
But that's about it. We're not the driver.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, like
Big part of your personality is the difference in microbiome.
Yeah, absolutely. And we share it with each other, and we share it with our pets as well when we like have pets in our home. And
Yes, we have our dog running around here in the woods looking for
have a look at
mushrooms,
if I can
looking
do
for
it.
truffles and mushrooms. And
So you trained her to truffle hunt?
yes.
Sorry, cheapers. Like
He's a
you said.
modified he. He's
He's a hybrid.
he's a trained truffle dog. Yeah,
That's cool.
How do you even do that training?
it's not difficult. You just, if you've got a biddable, trainable dog, you get a little bit of truffle and you can wrap it in we wrapped it in a kind of piece of tissue and hit it. You know, you get it, you get to smell it,
Okay.
and then you throw it somewhere, and he'll go and take it back,
Wow.
bring it back. Most dogs will, and then you give him a little treat,
Yeah.
and then you hide it a bit, like we put it under a curtain, I remember in the sitting room, and then he goes, and he doesn't see where you put it, and you say, get the truffle, and he'll sniff around. Eventually, he'll find the truffle, a treat again, and then you keep it up.
Okay.
And eventually, you bury it a little bit
Yeah.
in a flower bed or something, or in the garden, and you put them out in the garden, and we're playing truffle again.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Same thing.
And
and
he'll
and
smell
so
it.
how quickly did Musha, like how soon after you started training did he find his
We
first
did a few
apple?
sessions with him, and now he's at the point where I was with a friend the other day, and they bought these truffle crisps for me to try.
Okay.
And they opened the truffle crisps and said, "Oh, let's try those." And he immediately, and he doesn't particularly like crisps, but
Oh,
he's
right.
going wild. And I said, but fold them up and put them away. You fold them up, put them in his bag, and there's the dog, you know, wandering around, finds the bag, you know. So he's definitely,
He's keen for it now.
oh, he's keen for them, yeah.
And is there something? Is it nutrient-wise? Is it actually something that's good for?
No, I don't know that dogs. I know foxes eat truffles. So I'm not sure about dogs.
Okay.
And
I mean, they obviously can. The foxes can.
Are
But
truffles found everywhere? In all
I think
countries?
there's truffles all over Ireland. We
Really?
find them all over Ireland.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. And why is it we always associate pigs with truffles? What's that about?
Because the scent that the truffle gives off, the job of the truffle is to be eaten.
Okay.
So it gives off a scent that mimics the pheromone of a pig.
Oh.
And so the pigs go crazy for it.
So it's a sexual thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because I feel like...
But they're aphrodisiacs, did you not know that?
Isn't there something about in countries where people go and like...
Go on.
And like
Are you about to butcher some like cultural stereotype or something?
No, I can't believe I'm bringing this up when I know nothing about it. But I remember reading this amazing book about Italian traditions around food and chefs, and this guy going on this truffle hunt and finding that they would like put sperm on trees in order to encourage more truffles
hunting
to grow.
Oh, truffles to grow?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. You haven't heard that? Wow, I know.
I wouldn't have the same kind of friends as you have, obviously.
I love it.
Oh, wow, I did it again. No, I promise, it's not a thing I've just made up.
Okay.
I'm going to have
try and find a reference for this.
We're definitely finding a reference. I'm putting it underneath, and then there's going to be a picture of me going, see, I told you.
Yeah, exactly. Dancing around the tree.
Yeah. But there was like ancient, because of the aphrodisiac thing, and people would go to the forest, and it would be a kind of, a love ritual, I want to say. So it doesn't feel like a big leap.
No, it's not a huge leap. It's true. I know.
No,
it's just when you say sperm on trees, suddenly it's a different thing. That's gas. Anyway, so tell us more. Like your hunts this year. What's it been like? Because I went on a hunt with you in Kilrudry there at the beginning of October. It was pretty plentiful.
Yeah. We got lots of seps and lots of good eaters, good range of mushrooms.
Yeah.
This year has been a good year.
Okay.
It's been amazingly dry, actually, despite the fact that we've had so much rain in, really, I suppose, the early parts of October we've had a lot of rain, haven't we? The end of September.
Yeah.
But we had that very dry summer, that very dry spell.
Done the right thing.
I don't think we're over that yet, but it's certainly that stimulates, I think, growth in the trees and then more production of fungi.
Okay.
So what are the exact conditions, the perfect conditions for mushrooms?
Well, I think I think a warm summer and then followed by a wet period.
Okay.
Okay.
And you need the moisture for the mushrooms to really be produced.
Okay. Yeah.
But they're just a fruiting body, they're just like the apples on the tree.
Yeah.
And in the right conditions, they're plentiful, and sometimes they don't produce at all. Like people know fields where they would pick mushrooms, and sometimes they don't come.
It's just not always the way. Yeah.
There's many.
Are you finding this year that your hunts are much more full than ever? Is it getting more and more popular?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and we do a lot of days with companies, team building and things like that, where we bring groups out and teach them about mushrooms, and we cook out on pans and cook up some of the wild mushrooms.
Cool.
And so people are, that's getting more popular as well.
Yeah.
So
and do you think that's the interest in mushrooms themselves, the interest in like foraging, or the interest in what's it coming from?
Probably both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, people are like the idea of foraging food, and then mushrooms are getting more and more known for their health benefits and the fact that they're tasty. Lots of really tasty mushrooms.
Yeah, big time.
And in season, and they're healthy, they're nutritious.
Yeah. Great source of what? So protein, vitamin D,
selenium. Yeah, vitamin D, huge amount of vitamin D, selenium.
Yeah.
They're one of our really only sources of selenium in our diet, natural sources.
I didn't realise that actually. Yeah. That's cool.
They will be they're the highest selenium in our diet.
Oh really?
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah, because Brazil nuts is a big concern of Brazil nuts losing their selenium.
Yeah.
It used to be the case that 1 or 2 Brazil nuts could give you something like 100 micrograms of selenium, and I think that's dropped up to like some Brazil nuts just literally don't exhibit any selenium at all. This is one of those nutrients that has to be in the soil local to it.
Is that right? Yeah.
And so I suppose mushrooms are kind of uniquely placed because they can
extract that
nutrients
selenium
from such a wider kind of like whatever.
I remember hearing Ray Mears talk once and say that if you're in a wild situation, that it's not worth the calories it takes to hunt for a mushroom to eat the mushroom.
Oh right.
So that's kind of contrary to.
Well, they're low. They're not high calories,
energy.
so there's no fat. There's no.
Yeah.
But that's a kind of an old school approach to nutrition. To
yeah,
say
isn't
that,
it?
I mean, because a calorie is what's required to increase a litre of water's heat by 1 degree. That is 1 calorie. It's got nothing to do with what your human body actually requires, and that's why calories as a
concept.
as a nutritional reference point are mythological, like totally mythological, because we know our bodies are electrical beings. It's not just about carbohydrates and consumption of calories. I don't know. Yeah, so definitely, I wanted to spell it straight away. Ray, shut up.
Yeah. Maybe
Well,
he was
if
really...
you're looking for calories, you're not. I'm sure you can find things that are high. You will find things.
Go eat a spud. It's Ireland.
So,
You'll be
but
fine.
mushrooms are, they're very nutritious.
Yeah.
And low fat.
Yeah. So like in terms of other benefits, so medicinal benefits are some of the things that and then we're not making claims here. We'll just take one of those moments where we're not making claims or recommendations medicinally here. But talk to us a little bit about some of the research that is around mushrooms and the medicinal kind of.
Yeah, well, turkey tails would be one of the big ones, and they're using turkey tails, have been used since the 80s in Japan.
Yeah.
In cancer treatment.
Yeah.
It's
and they don't,
as an adjunct therapy to chemo and radiotherapy.
Yeah. So it supports the activity of chemo, or that's what they use.
Yeah,
it for.
I think it improves the recovery time and makes it easier. But also there's anti-tumor effects, I believe, is the reason they use them. I'm not a medical person, so I'm not.
I know. I believe I may have read.
I have read
something
these
online.
things.
I don't know.
But certainly people believe in them, and in Japan, the Department of Health pays for them to be used. So
that's amazing, isn't it?
And they take like things like lantanin from the shiitakes, and they use that specifically in oncology.
Yeah. But also the FDA in the States now, there's currently a clinical trial going on with turkey tails in the States.
Cool. Are they human level yet?
With humans, yeah.
That's serious.
Baxter University.
Great.
Under a professor of oncology.
Great.
Can you find turkey tails anywhere?
You can actually, yeah. They're quite easy to find in season, but the outside of the kind of autumn, maybe a little bit before, a little bit after, you won't. They kind of break down a bit.
Okay.
But you'll get them in season. They're quite common.
Okay, so obviously, like cancer is one of those things that people talk about medicinal mushrooms. Any other kind of particular benefits that you're?
The other one that we're seeing is lion's mane, and people with neurodegenerative conditions and like MS and things like that are seem to be getting great benefit from lion's mane, and there's also people recovering from strokes and things like that, and nerve damage.
Yeah,
and the lion's mane is amazing looking, isn't it?
Beautiful looking.
Yeah.
Beautiful looking mushroom.
Stunning looking.
A tasty mushroom.
Is it? I've never eaten it. We tried to order some. One of our Dutch organic veg suppliers actually has lion's mane listed this year at cost was it €20 a kilo or something, maybe or 20 euros a piece. Sorry, not a kilo.
Piece.
I've
grown them, but they're and
what do they cook?
I've never seen them wild. In Ireland.
Yeah.
So I think they do grow, but I've never seen them.
Yeah, I heard what's his name, Jeff. What's his name? The guy who was at the mushroom conference last year. I'm not saying Jeff Dunham. It's not Dunham. Anyway, he was running a walk, or he was hosting a mushroom hunt in St Anne's Park last year, and I believe lion's mane was found.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah, I know that there are lion's mane, and I probably know it from talking to him actually. Yeah.
What sort of trees do they grow on?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah.
I think they may grow in different trees.
Yeah.
But I've never gone out looking for them in the wild. I mean, we go out looking, and I've never seen them, so I've never kind of factored them into what we're likely to find.
Okay. Yeah.
What are the most common ones that you're likely to find?
Yeah. Well, growing out of trees, you've got the chicken of the woods. You've got the beefsteak fungus, which are both good eaters.
Reishi? No. Chicken of the woods is good, but it's maitake.
No, maitake is the hen of the woods.
Sorry, they're different.
Which grows at the base of the tree.
Okay.
You'll see the maitakes at the base of the tree. Lovely edible mushroom.
Okay.
And yes, one that they've used for medicinal purposes. And then you've got the chicken of the woods grows out of the trunk of the tree.
Okay.
It's a kind of a yellow, very beautiful looking mushroom.
Okay.
Has the texture and flavour of chicken.
Really?
Unbelievable.
So kind of tears in like
yes, it does. Yeah, fibres. Yeah. You could put it on someone's plate.
Yeah.
And they'd be hard pressed to identify it as not being chicken.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, because I tried like kind of braising oyster mushrooms recently. So people were saying it kind of works like pulled pork, and it kind of does, but it's a bit light. It's not that kind of like real meaty density like oyster mushrooms. Is a bit light. That's cool. So what other mushrooms are?
But by the way, you should never eat a mushroom that grows off a yew tree.
Oh
so
that's
if they're growing off a yew tree, they're poisonous.
Yeah. Okay,
because yew trees are poisonous.
This was Ritaxin, or what's it called?
Taxol.
Taxol. That's the specific. Like yew trees were used in medicinal medicine by like in Druidic times to sterilize people, to sterilize young women if they wanted to abort a fetus.
Really?
They'd use yew. And yew is also one of the interesting ones that's used as a very fringe therapy, I think, along in cancer as well.
Well, Taxol is I think one of the chemotherapy drugs.
Yeah, powerful thing.
Yeah.
Weird. Yeah.
So you don't want to be eating that stuff.
We'll avoid
that
stuff.
stuff.
If you don't know what a yew tree looks like, look for the red berries, or just like don't go near it. Yeah. Just don't pick mushrooms on your
Don't eat anything from a yew tree.
Yeah, pretty much. That's it.
So what other ones are most common when you're on the hunts?
So on the ground.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're looking for the great eaters like the porcini, the porcini, sep, penny bun, which is the same mushroom.
Cool.
The chanterelles, the parasols, the lovely bluets that you get at this time of year. They're a nice sweet mushroom. Got a kind of lilac colour.
It's right here.
I got a basket of mushroom. Here's one I picked. Here's one I picked earlier.
Yeah, literally. Yesterday.
Yeah, we got things like chanterelles in here.
Okay.
Like these guys.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, great. Those are chanterelles. So chanterelles, why have they got a French name? Were they found in France first, or was that?
Yeah, probably named in France. I think there's a winter chanterelle.
That was beautiful.
You can call that a yellow leg as well.
Nice.
And see
really
why.
Nice.
See how beautiful that is. Like see the.
Yeah, it's stunning actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can get it under the frills. So what's the purpose of those? Is that the gills are where the spores come from? Is that it?
That's the hymenium, the spore producing surface.
Okay, yeah.
Mushrooms are very effective at propagating themselves through the distribution of their spores.
Okay, yeah.
So they have all kinds of elaborate ways of spreading spores.
Gotcha. Okay, magic. Nice. Nice one.
Yeah, so they're two of the good ones. Mainly, I mean, we have bits of puffballs and things like that in here.
Puffballs, you're not a big fan of eating the puffballs?
No, they're fine actually. Those ones are good. Some of them are a little bit,
how would you cook
eating
it?
airboard or polystyrene.
So you want to put a lot of moisture in if you want to like make them nice and juicy. Yeah.
Well, if you break up those puffballs and fry them on the pan, they're fine. They're
decent,
good.
right?
Yeah, they're nice.
But you were saying you test a puffball as well. So like if it's mildly feels kind of hollow and kind of like polystyrene, then it's kind of gone over. Is that right? It should have some kind of give.
Yeah, if it's sporulating, if it's puffing spores, then it's gone too far.
Oh, really? Because we used to spend ages jumping on them as kids.
Well, I mean, that's a good thing to do with them when they go that far, because you're helping them spread their spores.
That's true. Just maybe hold your breath, because who knows.
Yeah, people can react to the spores,
Yeah.
If you don't puff them in your face.
There's a lot of talk about reishi spore these days. Reishi spore powder as opposed to
reishi
kind of
I see that,
stuff, which apparently there's some sort of what is it? It's like 700 times more immune activity from a spore weight for weight from the reishi spore than it is from the reishi fruiting body, which is
that's interesting, because I know the spores of some mushrooms don't have the same qualities as the mushroom.
Oh, really?
So some of the toxic mushrooms, their spores aren't toxic.
And how would you get a spore? How would you
Well, you get a spore print. You can. I mean, on a kind of a. Well, I mean, any mushroom. These mushrooms are kind of a little bit awkward, but like with a cap mushroom, you lay them on a piece of paper.
Okay.
And usually use a color that, if you know the color of the spores on these, use a color that'll show up. So if they're white spores, put them on black paper or dark paper.
Okay.
And then they'll put a glass over them or something over them to cover them from the wind, and leave them for a few hours, and you'll see they'll shed spores. You'll see this little powder on the.
Wow.
Yeah. Cool. You can see spores with. Well, I mean, you can see them with puffballs, but you can often see spores if you look very closely and the light is right. You see spores coming out of mushrooms.
But if you're talking about like the benefits of
how would they harvest the spores from?
How would they then?
They fall. If you see reishi growing on a tree, you'll always notice there's these kind of. It almost looks like a dye runoff
down the tree.
But it's all the powder from the spores falling down on the tree.
Okay, amazing.
And then people would what? Eat them?
You can brush them off. You can brush them off.
Encapsulate them in this case.
Brush them off and put them in a capsule, probably.
Seems like you'd have to get so much to get.
You get huge amounts of spores from them.
Really?
I think, yeah.
Is reishi, is birch polypore and reishi, are they kind of related, or is there a?
Not really.
No, okay.
I mean,
just the fact they grow in the same kind of style.
A reishi is a Ganoderma.
Yeah.
The birch polypore is a different type.
Distinct species.
Yeah. Okay. It's a bracket fungus, and we use birch polypore to make a tea that's very good for colds and things like that. It's antiviral.
Yeah.
And I mean, it works extremely well for us.
Oh, nice.
To do that.
Good stuff. And so with birch polypore, one of the things, I think it was the birch polypore you had last week when we were on the Forage, you or the guy who was with you, Craig.
Yeah.
Yes. What's Craig's full name again?
Worrell.
Craig Worrell, amazing foraging expert, really interesting guy as well, really good fun.
Yeah. Knows his mushrooms.
Really knows his mushrooms, and is willing to talk about the mistakes he's made as well.
Knows how to cook too.
Yeah, it does know how to cook. That was fun, wasn't it? I mean, he made like sep powder and all sorts of like sep oil.
He made a sep tart that was very good.
Oh wow! Ooh, next time. But he was talking about how you take a strip off, I think it was the birch polypore, and you can use it as a plaster.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's antiseptic and it's
like it
actually holds. It holds, sticks together.
Really?
And then it kind of dries and solidifies around the finger. Like so, if you were to cut, it's the perfect idea as a plaster.
Wow.
It's a great idea. And
that's Otzi, isn't it? The Iceman that they found.
That's what we're going to ask you next.
He was carrying two mushrooms. And one of them in a on a leather tie around his neck.
Yeah.
So they were obviously very relevant, very important to him. Yeah. And one of them was the birch polypore, which they reckon it was being used for medicinal purposes.
Amazing. Like
he also had another one that they reckon was used for tinder for starting fires.
That's it, and he had little pine cones as well that were still smouldering apparently, that held a little. They were actually, they believe that they were still smouldering in his pack when he was climbing through the snow at what was the altitude? Some insane altitude he was found at.
Really?
That's why he was so well preserved. That Iceman thing, that's an amazing story.
Yeah.
Really, and there was all sorts of things like the steel in his blade was something that shouldn't have been around yet, and it was from a totally different part of the world. There's all sorts of weird conundrums around that.
Iron probably was it?
It was something like that, because I think was he pre-Iron Age, or just something like that. Something. But he kind of confounds a lot of historians. Like a lot of
he disproves some of the theories.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. A lot of our history is theory, isn't it? It's not real stuff necessarily. Yeah. Fascinating. So, like one of the things Lydia was talking to you off camera about was about like your relationship to foraging and why you feel it's an important thing and what it does for you and what I think it holds.
We were talking a little bit about like when you were a child and how your childhood was and how you were out in the fields barefoot running around and having that connection to land and to nature.
When I was a child we spent a lot of time out in the wild and climbing trees and fishing and swimming and foraging to a certain extent, whether it might be raiding orchard type foraging, but it could be any type of foraging, and even mushrooms. And that did give us, we'd know the birds, and you'd know a bird's nest, you'd know to identify, you'd know the types of eggs, and you knew about nature, and you knew the complexity of nature, and you knew the beauty of nature, and I think that's something that's vital to our health and to our because it gives us in difficult times, it gives us a kind of a base level where you realize you're just a part of all of this. Whereas in our more modern technology world, I suppose we see ourselves as the pinnacle of it. But in reality we're just a part of it.
And there's something really, I mean, now kind of depression rates are higher than ever, suicide rates are pretty high, and a lot of that's to do with that feeling of loneliness and lack of connection, right? And I think when you have a belief system or you have a practical application of that understanding that we're part of a greater whole, that we're not this one individual thing that's lonely over here, actually we're part of this big network of connection, it can be such a comforting thing that then on those days, I know for me, on those days where your mind's playing tricks on you, if you get out and walk in nature for an hour, at the end you go, okay, actually that tree has seen so many things, and my little tiny piddling thing that's bothering me, that tree's still going to be there and I'm going to be gone, and it is just, it's comforting. It gives you a perspective.
And fungi is an ideal way of getting that appreciation because it more or less interacts with everything. So all the plants, the birds, the insects, everything around us is interacting, and fungi is a part of that. So it's if you take an interest, and we have some children who come on our courses and on our days, and that are really enjoy learning about fungi, but that brings them then in other directions, and it makes them realize, holy moly, what about all these trees? How do they all work? How is everything exchanging this, exchanging that, and these insects getting infected and dying from fungi, and then others feeding on it, and animals feeding on it, and all the different effects. And all the...
I remember when Avatar came out, and everyone was like, "Oh wow, Avatar! Isn't that so amazing that the forests are connected and they're all talking to each other, and they were going, God, that would be amazing, you know, it's so beautiful, and you're like, no, that's actually what it is.
Yeah.
It's not like some made up mythical thing.
That's what's going on in your back garden, unless you're spraying it.
Yeah.
You know, any little patch of soil, that's what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, everything from the worms to the fungi to the bacteria to your soil is full of all of these things, and the plants are feeding off them, and you're feeding off the plants.
And that was it. There was another thing that you said that was really nice. I was saying, you know, it's so important. I mean, foraging's become this sort of buzzword, which is nice because it means more people are foraging, but I think, you know, it can become sort of a trendy thing to do without like an understanding of why one might forage and what the greater meaning behind that is. And I was saying, you know, because this is our land and this is a connection, you know, it's in our blood, it's in our bones, and you were saying, well, it is us, it's in our lungs, it's our microbiome.
There's a microbiome in our lungs.
Yeah.
There's a microbiome in our stomach. We're exchanging with what's around us all the time, so we are of it and it is of us. Yeah.
So it's a vested interest in us to mind our planet because it is us.
Yeah. Is there anything you've heard about, like mold toxicity and that sort of stuff, environmental mold toxicity? Is there anything like on that stuff that you've kind of read on or heard of?
No, I know that mold can be damaging to people.
It's just funny that there's, like, you know, when you evolve with something, you evolve with a species for so long to the point where so many of them are beneficial, that there's still ones out there that are like, well, I suppose it's the same on the planet. There's loads of people maybe that aren't.
That are a bit toxic.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, there's lots of fungi that are toxic.
Yeah.
And molds and mold spores and that can be toxic to some people and some to all people.
Yeah.
So
are there theories around that? Why that might have happened?
I don't know of any, but I'm sure there must be. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Is it a protective thing for the fungi, or you know, this theory about fungi releasing bacteria and viruses relative to what's going on above the ground? Have you heard this?
No.
That there's all the bacteria and viruses and all that are in the ground around us, and they're saying that fungi is kind of a gateway that can release it from the ground, depending. So if, say, there's an overpopulation of something above the ground,
interesting,
they're the gatekeeper, and they can release certain viruses that can thin down the population of a certain.
Like a natural culling.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, and that makes you really respect it a little bit more. Absolutely.
Golly, the god of
the mushrooms are in control.
Yeah. Well, the more you look into it, the more. I mean, fungal spores are capable of space travel, and fungal spores are everywhere. So everywhere they are resilient.
Yeah.
So you know they would survive on an asteroid if this planet, God forbid, was to disintegrate. Fungal spores can survive. And they would survive space travel and could survive,
so
possibly
forget
being
about
deposited.
It's fungi.
Well, and in clean room environments, they'll tell you the hardest thing to exclude are fungal spores.
Okay.
Really?
So they have to.
Pervasive thing.
They're very pervasive.
That's magic. I maybe tell you one of the things you made a little bit of reference to earlier on was about the cordyceps mushroom. I think was about, you were talking about how kids seeing kind of like ants dying and mushrooms involved and all that. Can you explain maybe that relationship, because that's one of those more.
The cordyceps changes the behavior of the ant.
Yeah.
So cordyceps, it's a fungus that infects ants, and the ants, when they're infected, it changes their behavior, and it will force them or influence them to climb to the highest point around them. So that's usually the top of a tree or a bush, and then they lock their mandibles in at the top, and at that stage a little shoot, like a mushroom shoot, comes out of the head, killing it, and then rains spores back down onto the colony. So if you think about it, it's about the most effective way of infecting the rest of the colony. And if soldier ants notice that behavior change in an ant, they will take the ant, bring it away from the ant nest, kill it, and then kill themselves. That's how
amazing?
Seriously they take it.
That is absolutely amazing.
It's harikiri. It's kind of like Japanese culture, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah, very much so. To the greater good
of the whole colony.
I mean, just it gives you a sense of like how protective ants are being and how conscious of the power of mushrooms they are.
And conscious of the pack,
Conscious of the pack, yeah.
which we aren't.
Yeah, which we're not.
We're like individualist.
Yeah. I feel like mushrooms are a great way for us to kind of like societally reconnect as well. Like one of the things about mushroom hunt that you're doing, I mean, they're really growing. They're like, there's 50 people. The one you said there was 80 people at the one most recent.
We'd have. I mean, we're turning people away.
I mean, I had people who wanted to go, and we were ringing up trying to get them on, and they couldn't. There was no space.
There's a lot of interest.
Yeah, and you're like.
But we do a good. It's a good day with lots of. It's. I think it's an entertaining day. You've been on the thing.
Oh yeah.
And you've got food, and you've got you've got lunch, and you're in a lovely environment, and you're out in nature, and you pick up a few things, you learn a few things on the day, and really the idea is to pique people's interest and give them an idea of what the whole fungal thing is in the context of the world, but then also mushrooms in the context of the fungi kingdom.
I think it seems like it's such a great way to. A great analogy around health and wellness, that if you are doing you're wanting to bring health and wellness into a workplace or into your family or whatever, rather than going like, hey, it's really important that we look after our community and that we look after what we eat and our body and all of this stuff, to bring them out on a mushroom hunt and to learn that stuff that you're talking to about. They're learning by osmosis that stuff, that it's filtering in there, like,
and you get everything from, there's lots of laughs around psychedelic mushrooms, there's all kinds of stories, and there's Santa Claus and flying reindeer, and how to make a reindeer fly?
So we'll have to just put a caveat on this one. If anybody's listening who has maybe children, maybe this is the time
I don't know where you think I'm going to go on this. I mean, I'm talking about making reindeer fly. I'm talking about enabling Santa Claus.
So what does Santa Claus rely on?
Santa Claus, the reindeers know to eat fly agaric mushrooms.
Okay.
And they're the red and white mushrooms, fly agaric.
You're the red ones with the white spots on
the top. The ones we were talking about the other day. Yeah.
And then that is actually what enables reindeers to fly.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Potent.
Yeah, it's a psychoactive mushroom, and that's what it does to reindeers. And they do. You will see reindeers jumping around the field when they've eaten them.
It's mad. It's really mad. And isn't there something?
And that is one of the perceptions of that psychoactive substance. Is it gives the impression that you are, people, I've heard accounts of it, people who take steps think that, they're taking huge steps as if they're taking off. And so there's definitely, well, there's a whole association of that mushroom and Christmas and the Sami in Siberia and the Arctic, and everything from Santa Claus coming through the chimney and all of that. Well, so the Sami drink this in the winter. They actually collect the urine of the reindeers. Now this isn't, and that's got the psychoactive substance in it.
Yeah. But it's taken out the poisonous stuff, has it?
And it's removed the poisonous stuff.
That's the reason why they're drinking the weed.
Exactly, that's what I'm trying to get across.
And they ferment it in the stomachs, in deer stomachs, which they store stuff in, and they keep it then. And in the winter time, they have their yurts full of this stuff. And they then the snows come, and it's 24/7 dark outside. So they go into kind of a hibernation, as I suppose do the reindeers, and they drink this in their yurts as the snow builds up on the outside. And it's soporific, and it makes them almost comatose, and they go into a kind of a hibernation. And, when they wake up, they drink a bit more, and they sleep for another couple of days.
That's kind of ideal. I mean, that's what you want to do over winter, proper hibernation.
But spiritually, they say that it also gives them a connection at that time with the reindeer. So the reindeer also eat it.
Wow.
And then they have... And then, obviously, the only way to get in and out of the yurts as the snow builds up is through the smoke hole or the chimney.
That's what it's about.
So you have them coming. If they have to go from one yurt to another, they have to go through the
chimney.
And they come through the chimney with gifts.
And wasn't there something about why we hang baubles on trees?
And then the same people, when they're passing through the pine woods, they take up the fly agaric mushrooms, which are red and white, and they stick them on the end of branches. And then they dry out on the ends of the branches, and the next time they're passing through that area, you can take them dried off the branches.
But they look like baubles on a Christmas
tree.
They
look like baubles on a Christmas tree. So there's the whole Christmas story is there.
It's phenomenal. It's so
mushrooms at the centre of everything.
Pretty much, exactly. Every fairy tale you ever thought of.
I mean, Santa Claus lives just a bit north of there, so that would be the culture that he's been brought up. That's his thing.
And he wears red and white.
His place.
Yeah, he's a trippy guy.
He likes those mushrooms.
Obviously,
He was like, what shall I dress in? I know.
Yeah, exactly.
Those mushrooms are pretty
gonna-
good.
If you got to cover the world in one night, you know, and you've got to get your reindeers,
You got to have some serious feel.
you got to, you know, there's got to be some magic involved.
Yeah,
It
true
has.
that.
It's a nice.
That's cool. Listen, thank you so much, Bill, for talking to us. It's
You're
been
very welcome.
really fascinating.
Really, and for me as a mushroom novice, I'm excited now.
Good.
Really excited.
Learn more. Come on one of our mushroom
I
hunts.
will.
Definitely. So if we want to find out more about Bill's mushroom hunts, you go on to mushroomstuff.com.
Mushroomstuff.com, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're on Instagram too.
We're on Instagram at Mushroom Stuff. We're on Twitter at Mushroom Stuff. We're Facebook Mushroom Stuff.
And so if you have...
So it's just Mushroom Stuff. If you can't think of Mushroom Stuff, just look up mushroom.ie and that will bring you to our website.
That's pretty good. You got them all covered. That's well done. Somebody works in tech, I think. Cool. Listen, thanks again for...
Thank you so much,
That
Bill.
was amazing chat.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you guys for watching. Cheers. We'll
Thank
see you
you.
guys soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.